Good morning. I hope everybody is staying safe and enjoying what's left of the summer. Thank you for tuning in again. I appreciate it. Um, so, there's two major rumors going around Toronto right now, and it's understandable considering how the season ended and with no real contracts to talk about this offseason. I think it's safe to say that there's going to be a lot of rumors flying around with no contracts to talk about. Really, this offseason is going to be more about how the Leafs can tinker and add to their lineup and open up some cap space. They already opened up a little bit of cap space with the Kapanen trade, and it's pretty understandable. Everybody knew going into the offseason that guys like Kapanen, Janssen, Kerfoot, their names were going to be out there. But the two major rumors are, one is Dean Blundell on his radio show cited some MLSE sources, and they're regarding Toronto Mapleleafs and the St. Louis Blues working on a trade for a right-handed D-man, and Colton Parayko's name came up. He's a great young defenseman. He would really solidify the top four for the Leafs. Playing alongside a guy like Morgan Riley with Muzzin and Hull already signed. That would be a real nice acquisition. And as per the rumor, it would cost something like a Janssen, a first round pick, and a defensive prospect along the lines of Timothy Liljegren or Rasmus Sandin. I personally said in my other videos that when it came to crunch time in the playoffs, the Leafs played Martin Marincin over guys like Calle Rosen and Timothy Liljegren and Rasmus Sandin. So it showed to me that the Leafs didn't have the confidence to play those guys in a very key time in the season, and they put Martin Marincin in. So if you're not going to play them, then you have to parlay them into some sort of asset that can play or can help down the line or something like that. So this rumor, Colton Parayko for a Janssen or a Kerfoot plus a first round pick that the Leafs just acquired in the Pittsburgh trade, and a defensive prospect. Like I personally would do that trade in a heartbeat if that was actually on the table. Making a trade like that would open up some cap space for St. Louis, roughly around $2 million in cap space. I think Janssen is making 3.4 and Colton Parayko is making, I think, 5.5. Yeah, he's making 5.5. So it would roughly open up 2.1 million for them, and they do need to open up some cap space. I think they're going to end up trading one of their goalies as well instead of losing them in the expansion draft when Seattle comes in. And that would open up some more cap space for them. They need to sign Pietrangelo, who's their captain, and considering he's making 6.5 right now, a raise of somewhere between 7 to 8 million long term for him looks like the asking price. So if 8 is his max, 8.5 million is his max. They do need to open. I think they have like 2 million, just over 2 million in cap space right now. So they would need to open up some cap space. So making a trade, trading Parayko for Janssen gives them a little bit more offense. and with Tarasenko just going under the knife, having surgery on his shoulder again, probably missing a good chunk of next season. Him being on the LTIR, Janssen is a good left-handed option. He's had some success in Toronto playing on the top two lines. There was a decent amount of time last year, not this year. This year he was hurt, but the year before that he scored, I think it was like 40 something points in like 50 something games. He could definitely play. He's got speed. He can definitely put the puck in the net. He's at minimum a 20 goal scorer. So I can see why the St. Louis Blues would look into something like that. Colton Parayko has 2 years left on his contract at $5.5 million. So he would probably need a raise after that. And with them having Pietrangelo and Justin Falk and Marco Scandella, you can only protect so many players in the expansion draft. So, if Pietrangelo gets signed long-term, Justin Falk is already signed long-term in St. Louis, and so is Marco Scandella. That would probably be 3 guys that they would protect, with Colton Parayko needing a new contract in a couple of years. It would make sense for St. Louis. I understand some people scoff at that rumor just because of the what's being offered by the Leafs. But you have to understand that the cap's going to be flat for the next 2 years, and with limited money coming in from profits, and the league might not have people in the stands next year. Cash is going to be limited, so it brings down the price a little bit for high-end players, but I could see that making sense for St. Louis, opening up $2.1 million there on that trading a goalie, probably holding on to Binnington and trading Jake Allen would open up another $4.35 million. So you can see how they would want to reallocate some of the 8.5 or 8.6 million that they're spending on goaltending and try to allocate that towards defense, Pietrangelo, and acquiring another forward like Janssen or Kerfoot or somebody like that. From what I see on Cap Friendly, the season after next, they have a lot of UFAs and RFAs, so they're gonna need to spend some money there. So that's the first major rumor in Toronto, is Toronto talking with St. Louis, and the second one would be Carolina having interest in Freddie Andersen. Now that's a rumor that comes from Elliot Friedman, so it's somewhat believable, but why wouldn't they want a goaltender? They have Reimer and Mrazek now, and if they're not getting the job done, they're a very good team in Carolina. A goalie like Freddie Andersen would solidify them on the back end. He solidified the Leafs the day he showed up. The first season Freddie showed up, Matthews, Marner, Nylander, everybody was, they were all rookies, and he backstopped them to a playoff in his first year, and they played Washington. All those games were close in that 6-game series, I believe. A lot of overtime. No doubt Freddie's a good goalie. Since he's come to the Leafs, he's been 3rd in the NHL in wins, only behind Vasilevsky and Bobrovsky. And he's also set the franchise record for most wins in a season with 38. And considering the defense that plays in front of him, he's clearly an upgrade in what they have in Carolina. But I think overall, there's a lot of teams in the NHL that could be looking for upgrades in net. If we just go through the league team by team, Arizona Coyotes have Ranta and they have Ranta and Darcy Kemper. That's right. So I think they're okay. Dallas has got Kudobin and Ben Bishop. They're okay in net with. St. Louis has got two good goalies. Vancouver is a team that needs a goalie. Jacob Markstrom, he's 30 years old. He's had one good season under his belt. There's no real pedigree there of success. A guy like Freddie Andersen would really make Vancouver a much better team. Philadelphia's got Carter Hart. Chicago's got Corey Crawford and Malcolm Subban. They're okay in Chicago. Washington, Braden Holtby's a free agent and he's really dropped off a cliff the last couple of years. They're going to go with Ilya Samsonov in net, but I think they're going to approach Braden Holtby and ask him to take a lesser role and platoon more of like a 50-50 system on a lesser contract. But if he walks, Washington could be in the market for a guy like Freddie with 1 year left at $5 million. The Vegas Golden Knights, they have Marc-Andre Fleury and Robin Lehner. Fleury makes $7 million. He's had Marc-Andre Fleury hasn't been so great the last couple of years, but he does have a pedigree. He is a good goalie. They might try to move Fleury and sign Lehner, but again, Lehner, like Markstrom, is 30 years old. He's had one good season under his belt, and it's been on defensive teams like the New York Islanders and the Vegas Golden Knights. Leonard was not so good in Chicago with a lesser defense in front of him. So the Florida Panthers have Bobrovsky. They're okay. Edmonton Oilers, they have Mikko Koskinen and they have Mike Smith, who's a free agent. They could try to run with a guy like Mikko Koskinen, but they could be looking for an upgrade in net. I think the Leafs without Freddie Andersen are pretty much what the Edmonton Oilers have been for the past couple of years without goaltending. A non-playoff team, possibly a lottery team. I think the Leafs are much better with a guy like Freddie in net. If they move on from Freddie and try to sign a lesser goalie to try to platoon with Campbell, I think it's not going to be a great situation there. San Jose Sharks, they have Martin Jones, who has been great, has been good in spurts, but overall he hasn't accomplished much in his career. They could be looking for an upgrade. Boston Bruins, there's rumors that Tuukka Rask can be done playing hockey, possibly. If that happens, and they're just left with Yaroslav Halak, they could be in the goaltending market. The Pittsburgh Penguins have Tristan Jarry and Matt Murray, and Tristan Jarry is a good young goaltender. Matt Murray hasn't been so great without Marc-Andre Fleury there. I see the Penguins moving on from Matt Murray this season, and he's not the type of guy I would want in Toronto. They could be in the goaltending market. Buffalo Sabres are okay. Carolina, the rumor started with Carolina wanting to upgrade in net. Calgary Flames are they have Cam Talbot and David Riddick. They're not so much into the goaltending market, but if Cam Talbot walks, I could see them maybe signing a cheaper goalie to try to tandem with David Riddick. Tampa Bay has Vasilevsky. Detroit doesn't really have much goaltending. They could be in the market. Nashville, they have UC Saros and Pekka Rinne. Pekka Rinne has, career-wise, historically, he hasn't been great in the playoffs. They could be looking for an upgrade there. Anaheim Ducks, they have Gibson. Minnesota has good goalies. New York Islanders have good goalies. Winnipeg has Hellebuck. New York Rangers, they have two young goalies in Lundqvist. They're okay. Montreal Canadiens have Price. Columbus Blue Jackets have two young good goalies. Well, they have one young goalie and a little bit of an older goalie, and Corpusalo. Colorado Avalanche, I think, are the dark horse in a Freddie Andersen sweepstakes. If Freddie Andersen was really available, I could see a team like Colorado really looking into him. Seeing what's going on with Colorado right now in the playoffs with their goaltending situation. Francouz hasn't been all that great, and they're having to play Michael Hutchinson, which Leaf fans know a lot about him. He's definitely not any good. I could see Colorado with the cap space that they have looking into a guy like Freddie for $5 million. Los Angeles has Quick. Ottawa Senators have Craig Anderson, but they could definitely use an upgrade. And New Jersey Devils, they're paying Corey Schneider $6 million over the next 3 years, 3 seasons, I believe. And they can definitely use an upgrade in net. I just don't know what you do with Corey Schneider at $6 million for the next 3 years. So I think if the Leafs made a guy like Freddie Andersen available, he'd be probably the number one choice for a lot of teams around the NHL, considering what's available in free agency. If you look at free agency, probably the best goaltender available would probably be Robin Lehner, and then it's Corey Crawford, Brayton Holtby, Craig Anderson, Jimmy Howard, Matt Murray. He's an RFA. Matt Murray, Jacob Markstrom, Thomas Greiss, Cam Talbot, Anton Khudobin. It's Brayton Holtby's 30, Corey Crawford's 35, Craig Anderson's 39, Jimmy Howard's 36, Jacob Markstrom is 30, Greiss is 34, Cam Talbot is 32, Khudobin's 34, Brian Elliott in Philadelphia is 35, Mike Smith is 38. There's a lot of old goalies on the market right now who haven't had great numbers. Leonard put up decent numbers once he went to Vegas. In Chicago, not so much. So if the Leafs were to move on from Anderson, I think their option would be to find someone like a Matt Murray, who's making 3.75 right now, and have him platoon with Campbell, who's on a 1.25, I think $1.2 million contract, and try to spend less money on goaltending and allocate that more towards the defense to try to make that better, and really just roll the dice on a tandem situation, because that's become a popular scenario in the NHL right now, is to have a tandem where they play less games and they make less money. But most of the good tandems in the NHL have a real quality number one goalie. Like Ben Bishop in Dallas and Khudobin. Ben Bishop is a really good number one. In Boston, they have Tuukka Rask with Halak, and Tuukka Rask is a really good number one. Unless you're playing a really good defensive system, like the way the New York Islanders do or the Vegas Golden Knights do, or Minnesota, I don't see a tandem working out in Toronto. You really need a bona fide number one to kind of make up for the deficiencies on the defense, and the Leafs will never ever be a defensive team. They're always going to play more of a running gun offense, try to win with scoring goals instead of playing defense, and to put two lesser goaltenders in net with no pedigree of being a number one goalie or having a long-term success playing 40-50 games, it's a hard thing to do. It's a real gamble, and I don't see the Leafs being a playoff team without Freddie, unless they get a quality number one to replace him. A guy like Leonard has never won more than 25 games in a season. Um, Jacob Markstrom has at most 28 wins in a season. It's hard to bet on a guy who hasn't had um, that kind of pressure on him. I think Freddie Andersen in Toronto, people overlook the amount of pressure that's on him, the amount of shots he faces with the defense in front of him, and the quality of the short scoring chances the Leafs give up. For him to have seasons of, 2.7 something or less goals against with a 916 save percentage, I think those numbers for how Toronto plays and the quality of the chances they give up, I think those are really great. They're those are really good stats. Now you never know. The Leafs could possibly end up with a tandem, and they could have success with that. But it's a real roll of the dice. Um, the Leafs have to bide some time. They do have young goalies in the system, but whether they flourish into number one or number ones or number twos, it's hard to tell. But it's a flat cap, so I don't see a lot of goalies getting big raises. Sort of like what we saw with Carey Price and Bobrovsky into the 10 millions. That's definitely not going to happen anymore. So it's, I think Leaf fans have an appetite to really, they want change, and the Leafs management team want to make big changes, and I think it's more on defense than it is in terms of goaltending or up front. I think the Leafs have their core, and as long as Kyle Dubas is the GM, he's going to ride with his core of Nylander, Marner, Matthews, Tavares, Hyman, Riley, Anderson. Based on what I've seen from guys like James Myrtle, who says the Leafs are dangling certain names, like Janssen, Kerfoot, Anderson, Kapanen, who's already been traded. Based on what I read, there's some teams that called and didn't want to pay the price for Kapanen, and they acquired around guys like Nylander, and the Leafs were asking for a legitimate top four D-man, like a Colton Parayko, right-handed. And not a lot of teams have that capital to give. Unless you're a Columbus with Seth Jones and Werenski, or you're a Carolina with Jacob Slavin and Dougie Hamilton, stuff like it. Unless you're those teams, and they're few and far between, you really don't have the capital to give up what the Leafs are asking for a guy like Nylander. So I think those trades are hard to make, and those guys are going to be around for a long time. But it's between now and I think October 9th and 10th are the tentative dates for the draft. So we're going to see a lot of rumors circulating in Toronto, and the rumor mill is in full force this year. When guys like Dean Blundell come out and say MLSE sources citing Toronto and St. Louis are talking, and Elliot Friedman says Carolina sniffing around Freddie Andersen, and James Myrtle says the Leafs are dangling three names, Kerfoot, Janssen, and Anderson. And I said in my previous video, I think the Leafs could move that entire third line. They have some options. In terms of young guys, they signed Barabanov. He's definitely going to play next year. They have Nick Robertson. They have Mikheyev. They have Korshkov. They have Adam Brooks. So they do have some young talent that's up and coming that can fill those spots, especially on the third line. Kerfoot was much better as a third line center than he was as a winger on either one of the top two lines. He was definitely more effective and contributed more as a third line center, and we saw that in the playoffs. Kerfoot with Kapanen and Nick Robertson was a really good line. And, if Kerfoot ends up sticking around and plays with either Mikheyev or Robertson and Barabanov, something like that, I think the Leafs can really reshape their bottom six, which is where they need to do the most work, and on the bottom of their defense. They did sign Lehtonen from who was Defenseman of the Year overseas, and he's definitely going to play next year. They say he can play the right side. He could end up with Morgan Riley, or he could end up on the third pairing, left or right side, with a guy like Dermott or Sandin. Depends on whether Sandin is moved or not in a trade. I don't see a lot of upside in Dermott anymore. I was really hopeful Dermott could turn into one of those versatile defensemen that could play left or right and had a little bit of offense in his game, but he's had a lot of opportunities to play bigger roles, and he hasn't really stepped up. So, he's an RFA, and he's really going to get squeezed by the Leafs. He's going to get offered something that starts with a 1. He's going to be in the 1 million range, and Hull got $2 million, and that's indicative of what they think of Hull and what they think of Travis Dermott and how far he's come. Hull has really solidified himself alongside Jake Muzzin as a shutdown pair, so Morgan Riley needs a partner, and it could be Lehtonen or it could be Dermott. If Dermott decides to play better next season, hopefully he sticks around. But if he doesn't stick around, the Leafs have a lot of assets, and they do have assets. A lot of people were saying, you can't get nothing for Kapanen. You can't get anything for Janssen. These guys are not worth anything. Well, we saw from the Pittsburgh trade that a first-round pick and a B-level prospect, Pittsburgh's arguably second or third best prospect, was the return for Kapanen. So that sets the price for Janssen, and that increases the price on Kerfoot because Kerfoot's better than both Janssen and Kapanen. So the Leafs have some capital. Dubas has gone on record to say that they may not spend all of their cap space. They might go into the season with some cap space and let that cap space accrue. And so they have more flexibility when it comes to the trade deadline, which they didn't have at all this year because they were $10-11 million into LTIR, and they ended up spending close to $100 million in an $81.5 million cap in a cap world where the limit is $81.5 million. So I said that the Leafs could look into trading for a dead contract like Marian Hossa's that Arizona carries right now. I think it's a $5.5 million cap hit. Trading for a contract like that would pay for Colton Parayko for the next season. It's pretty much the exact same cap hit. So Leafs have a lot of options. Dubas has shown that he's flexible and that he's willing to think outside the box in terms of LTIR contracts and opening up cap space however way you have to do it. The Leafs took on Nathan Horton and David Clarkson, which was, I think, ended up being 10.5, close to $11 million in cap, and that's pretty much what Marner cost. So we'll see what happens. It's going to be a crazy off season. I personally don't want to see Freddie go. I don't think the Leafs are a playoff team without Freddie. I will go on the record to say that. And if they end up moving him and miss the playoffs, I think if Dubas rolls the dice and goes with a tandem that makes less than what Freddie's making, and the Leafs miss the playoffs, I think that could be the end for Dubas. You can't miss the playoffs with this kind of, it's going to be along the lines of what Chiarelli did in Edmonton. There was that year where they won a couple of rounds and the hype was huge, and then all of a sudden they missed the playoffs consecutive years after that, and Chiarelli turned into the joke of the NHL, and they had to make a change there, and they replaced him with Ken Holland. So goaltending is the most important thing. As we saw in the playoffs, defensive teams can shut down offense, but you need goaltending. And even though Freddie wasn't the best, you can't spend $50 million on your offense and expect the guy to get a shutout every night to win games in the playoffs. Tampa overcame Columbus, and they overcame Boston, and they did it with their offense. They did score goals, but their goalie was good. It was good too. So you need a mixture, and I think next season will be the first season. Freddie's had a real good, capable backup behind him, and he's gonna step back a little bit, play less games instead of having to play 60, 65 games. He could play less games. Campbell could play a little bit more, and I think that would help Freddie a lot. Freddie's had no help in Toronto since he's arrived. He's faced the most shots. He's third in wins since he's arrived. And like I said, with the amount of high quality chances and the high danger chances the Leafs give up, he's not really had much help in terms of defense or a backup goalie where he can take some nights off. So his workload has been very heavy, and I think next year is the first year since he's come to Toronto where the Leafs can lighten his workload a little bit and have a real capable backup. So I'm interested to see what that dynamic would look like if Freddie doesn't get dealt. And I really hope he doesn't get dealt. I think the Leafs need to address their defense, and signing a goalie for $3 to $4 million to save $1 million on Freddie to spend on defense is not a huge difference maker. Freddie making $5 million is a really good goalie for that money. And if you go into the free agent market, Leonard's coming off a $5 million contract. He's not going to get any less. Corey Crawford's coming off $6 million. Brayton Holtby's coming off $6.1 million. And these guys are not going to take less money. So pretty much anything you go into in the free agent market and sign is going to cost more than Freddie. And the Leafs need that cap space. So if they end up moving Freddie, I think, if they trade him to Vancouver and get like Markstrom back, or trade him to Edmonton and get Koskinen back, and have one of these guys play tandem all season with Campbell, I don't know what the results would be. I don't think the results are going to be great. I don't think they're going to be a playoff team with that kind of tandem. And you're saving maybe $1 million, maybe $1.5 million in terms of cap to spend more on defense, which $1.5 million could be Dermott on a new deal, 1 or 2 year deal. But I don't think that solves your defensive problems. So I think the Leafs need to think bigger. And the Colton Parayko deal with the rumors going around with Janssen and a defensive prospect and a first to add Colton Parayko is a better deal in my mind. It's a better way to go. I think that if the Leafs get a guy like Colton Parayko to really solidify the top 4 to play alongside Riley, I think the bottom 2 with Lettinen and Sandin and Liljegren and Rosen and Dermott, I think two of those 4 or 5 defensemen could really step up and play some decent minutes on the third pair. So it's definitely going to be an interesting off season. It's already September 1st, so we got a month and a bit before the draft, so it'll be interesting to see what Dubas does. And it's going to be significant. There's definitely going to be something significant. It's going to happen in terms of a trade. The Leafs are opening up cap space and they're acquiring capital like first round picks from Pittsburgh to work something out. So we'll see. It'll be interesting. Again, I thank you for tuning in. Like or subscribe, or let me know your comments. Let me know what you think the Leafs should do with a goalie like Freddie. Do you think the Leafs should move on? Should they hold on to him? Is there a capable number one out there that maybe I didn't mention that you think is a good idea? Let me know. Okay, see you soon.